Bill 2025, proposing legislation that seeks to amend Ghana's Public Financial Management Act, which is Act 921, blocking the release of public funds, including IGF, to any ministry, department, or agency without a certified development plan from the National Development Planning Commission, NDPC. The Honorable Kojo Nkrumah is MP for Ofoase Ayirebi, former Works and Housing and Information Minister, at our table. Kojo, good morning to you. Honorable, welcome back.
Thank you.
After almost 4 years.
It's good to be back.
So we have a matter with you, but we'll settle it after.
We will.
Okay, it's good to have you back here.
Pleasure.
Now, you're sponsoring a bill, which is the main reason why you're here, but I can't let you go without asking you some key questions in the NPP. On Saturday, I was in studio and my colleagues were on the ground monitoring the NPP delegates conference. You went through a number of motions, 56 of them, 2 of which were struck down by your delegates and 54 actually went through. Now, I've heard you speak on other platforms about, not making public that election 2024 report and saying that, well, it contains trade secrets. We don't want other people to learn from our book. And there are personal, really internal things that we don't want the world to know. But you also mentioned a number of reasons which accounted for the loss of the NPP. And I just want to find out how these motions that have gone through the delegates seek to, cure the ills of that report and others that came before it.
So, good morning to you and your viewers. As I have mentioned, though we will not publish in detail that report, the executive summary has been made known. The 4 major issues that led to our loss in 2024 comprised policy or governance policy decisions, particularly on the economy. So a lot of people were of the view that our responses to the economic challenges were not robust enough. We also had corporate governance, party corporate governance and discipline issues. What
does that mean in essence? So
how the party is run, who has authority to do something at various levels of the party and who is responsible for what. In any organization, if the corporate governance becomes weak, your ability to fulfill your mission and your vision becomes challenging. And so we had that kind of issue as well. And then we had operational challenges, even things that were quite clear, getting them done, sometimes run into conflicting situations. And finally, we had a situation where a good number of people felt that they were not part of the decision making of the party. They didn't necessarily disagree with the decision, but they didn't feel involved. And so what the party did after the Michael Quay report came in, first was to explain it to our people across the country during the thank you tour, and then to put together the Constitution Amendment Committee, of which I am a member, chaired by our lawyer Frank Davis, aimed at starting the process of reforms. And so the reforms respond to these 4 things. First of all, how does the party itself get more involved in governance policy formulation and not just leave it to the government? Because the party births a government, and very often you find that the party goes to bed and the government is only doing its own thing. So we've tried to cure that through motions 26, 27, and 30. Then we've also tried to deal with the corporate governance issues. Who is the leader of the party? How much power do the Council of Elders have? Who, acts in somebody's absence so that you don't have gaps there? For example, in connecting one of the most important parts of the party, the polling station executive, to the rest of the party structure, who is responsible? What are the backup mechanisms there? So we've tried to deal with the corporate governance issues as well. We've also tried to deal with the operational issues in the party on a day-by-day basis. Who is responsible for day-to-day decisions, financing, etc. We've tried to deal with those ones. And then we've also tried to expand the electoral colleges that participate in decision-making. If you look at what we've done now, we've expanded by about 40% towards a one-man, one-vote in 2028. Where every card-bearing member of the party in good standing can participate in decision-making. And we believe that this is the beginning of our rebuilding exercise. And our theme for the conference was rebuilding together based on our values or with our values, trying to go back to the values that our forebears laid down. So that's what we've been trying to do.
So when it comes to the party's corporate governance, you're quite specific on, what actually needs to be done. The people feel disconnected. They feel that this elitist system needs to be abolished. More people need to vote. Moving, the broad base of voting generally from about 220,000 to 280,000,
yes.
I'm told.
Yes.
Why not be as specific on the economic issues that puts the party in opposition after an overwhelming majority in the first administration of His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, and admit to the Ghanaian people that on this matter we were wrong, and on that matter we were wrong, instead of, putting it in that whole economic thing that people were not
so you
unhappy with.
You have to put together, may I say, a team from within the party that can even then examine those issues of governance that have come up and come to a view that these ones we were right on, these ones we were not right on. The process of putting together that, team is what is addressed, I think, by motion number 27, our sector committees. Previously, our sector committees used to be made up mostly of members of parliament and led by members of parliament. By motion 27, the amendment we've done allows us to reorganize those sector committees. It also then allows us to set up actually a policy directorate within the party, where the sector committees on a regular basis, whether we're in power or in opposition, will be using our philosophy as a party, our philosophical positioning as a party, will be addressing policy matters, so that if you are the flag bearer tomorrow, you ride on the policy positions of the party to advance, your governance agenda. And even if we are in power or in opposition, the party now, under motion 26, will bring policy matters to conference, which didn't used to be the case. But you have to make these amendments to, may I say, correct the process by which it is done before it translates into what you are looking for. So this is the beginning. We are hopeful. I think we're going to have another council meeting, hopefully sometime this week. We are hopeful that now that these structures have been put in place, they can get to work.
Now, let's get to the substantive matter, and I'm sure that in the course of the conversation we have course to, come back to some of the things that we've talked about. But here is what you're proposing, an amendment to our existing Public Financial Management Act 2016. What's wrong with it?
So, like the lawyers say, there's a lacuna, there's a gray area, there's a gap in the current legal architecture. If I may take a minute to go back, the laws of Ghana spell out how money is raised and how money is spent and accounted for. And it connects it to the governance agenda of the country. If you look at Article 36(5) of the Constitution, essentially what the Constitution says is that when you run a manifesto and you win power, you have to convert that manifesto into a 4-year development plan, known as the Coordinated Program for Social and Economic Policies. That becomes the medium-term guiding document. So when Nana Akufo-Addo won in 2017, we quickly prepared it, I think within about 6 months, and took it to Parliament for Parliament to approve. And for the 4 years, that was the medium-term development plan that Ghana was working with. In the second term, we did same. It was led by Professor Jambafo and the NDPC. Then you go to Act 480, which is the National Development Planning Systems Act. Act 480 spells out the job of the National Development Planning Commission, though Articles 86 and 87 of the Constitution lay it down. Act 480 fleshes it out some more. And Act 480 breaks it down to how district assemblies, ministries, departments, and agencies should go about their strategic planning, and ties it to the 4-year plan that a president has put out. So as a district assembly, ministry, department, or agency, it is expected that your plan is tied to the medium-term development plan of the Republic, which is based on the social contract that a president has signed with the public. Then you come to the Public Financial Management Act, Act 921. If you read section 21(5)(a)(2), it says that the national budget must be based on approved plans. So which approved plans are we talking about? Is it the plan that has been approved by the board of the organization, or by the district assembly, or by cabinet, or by who? Our understanding is that the approved plans that are being talked about are the certified plans in accordance with Act 480. But because that is not clear, you have ministries, departments, and agencies still accessing public funds to pursue plans other than what the president or any president may have committed to under Article 36(5). And that becomes a gap. By our estimation, between 17 to about 19% of the annual budget is being spent on things that are not exactly in the president's 4-year plan, any president's 4-year plan. You have ministers, heads of departments and agencies, boards approving things that they believe are good, but they are not part of what we've agreed as a country to pursue. So what we are seeking to do with this private members bill is to close that gap, is to block that lacuna, and to come to a position that says that, yes, you can come up with your plan, but follow Act 480 and ensure that your plan is certified. The certification is what connects what you want to do at the district assembly to what the president has agreed with the country for the next 4 years that he is going to do. And if that is not done, A, you should not get funding from the finance ministry. B, you should not be able to use internally generated funds to pursue that.
So we'll talk about exactly what constitutes uncertified development plans. But what would a certification process entail if a district assembly, a metropolitan district assembly wants to pursue a certain project? How do we find out that that's a certified project?
So when you do your plan is supposed to be in accordance with the planning guidelines from the NDPC. When you are done with that plan, you are supposed to make it available to the NDPC, for the NDPC to validate that this thing that you want to do is in consonance with the 4-year National Development Plan that the President has had signed off and approved by Parliament. We are finding a number of instances, as I mentioned, in which the plans that district assemblies or ministries or departments or agencies want to follow, sometimes approved by their boards or planning committees, etc., is not exactly in consonance with the President's plan.
Give us some clear examples.
You may have, sometimes infrastructure projects that deviate from where we've decided to go. So let's take something like healthcare. You may have a system where the 4-year plan of the country says, or maybe even the medium term or the long-term plan, 10 years, 15, 20 years framework, says that we want to improve healthcare at the basic level. So we want to, for example, I'm just using this as an example, we want to make sure that in the next 10 years, every community has a primary healthcare unit, or what some may call a CHIPS compound elsewhere. That is the program. And then you can have a district assembly or a district chief executive who says, well, I see that one, but I believe that the most important thing to do at this point in time in my district is to build a science and technology center or an ICT lab.
A STEM lab for a secondary school.
For example. That may not be something that is wrong or bad in itself, but it is not in consonance with what we have agreed as a republic to do to solve a particular problem over a period across our country. Now, when we spend or dissipate resources like that, you always find that we are not able to tackle one problem and take it off the books that, okay, this problem, we've moved on, this is the next one. So you find resources being spent all over the place, being spent thin all over the place, and a lot of problems are not getting solved. You find projects, somebody becomes a chief executive and he says that our 5-year strategic plan is I want to build new head office in every region and a new national headquarters, when the funding allocation could have been used in providing services to the beneficiaries of that particular entity. So those are some of the gaps, and you want to ensure that what a president has committed to do over a period, which is certified under 36(5), Articles 36(5), is what everybody in the value chain is spending resources on. So that's the lacuna that we are trying to close.
So in essence, you're trying to make it impossible for a president to make a promise to God to build a national cathedral and use public funds to build it.
It's an interesting example. One of the things we have to examine, for example, is that in the 4-year plan, was there mention of a project like that? I doubt it was in the 4-year plan. But because of a gap like this in the law, you will find that an agency of government can pursue a project like that. If we have a law like this, what will end up happening is that if it is not in the 4-year medium-term plan that the president has campaigned on, which under Article 36(5) has been booked into the 4-year medium-term plan and approved by Parliament, you will not be allowed to spend money on projects like that.
Some would argue that it will just present another bureaucratic hurdle on top of there's several that exist that make getting anything done within the public service, fast or, expeditious in any way. How would you respond?
Bureaucracy is not a bad thing. Bureaucracy is aimed at ensuring that whatever you are doing is done in accordance with laid down rules and regulations. Yes, it would add another level of bureaucracy, but it will also, by our estimates, save us between about 17 to 19% of our budgets, because that would ensure that every single cedi or peso that is being spent in pursuance of the medium-term national development agenda. We're in a country where everybody assumes we don't even have a plan. We do have a plan, just that by our constitutional framework, this plan is in 4-year chunks. But not all our resources are being spent in pursuance of that plan. And so, yes, though it will add another layer of bureaucracy, it will close that hole that allows spending of money on projects and on things that are not in consonance with the National Development Plan.
In your research, I'm sure you came across a number of items that companies spend their IGFs on. So quite a number spend it on remuneration of staff. GBC has several of those instances. And yes, there are those infrastructural ones. So which ones are you really targeting? Is it the IGF not to be used to pay staff like, staff and look after staff welfare, or IGF used for what? Because now public sectors will feel like, okay, they are coming for our IGF and we need to resist this.
So why are you paying your workers? Even if you say it's for compensation, why are you paying them? You are paying them so that they will deliver some particular public good or service.
Or work done.
That work done or that public good or service, is that in consonance with the national agenda? If it is not in consonance with the national agenda, then you are paying them to pursue something else. You are paying them so that the organization is now on a frolic of its own. What by this legislation we are saying is, we're not saying don't pay your workers with your IGF. We are saying that the bigger goal that the organization is pursuing, for which reason you are going to pay your workers, make sure that that goal is certified by the NDPC as part of the National Development Agenda. So that when you are spending on your workers, we are clear that you are spending on them in pursuance of the National Development Agenda. It's not a big deal. All you have to do is to comply. All you have to do is to ensure that the strategic plan of the organization, the annual plan of the organization is in consonance with the national agenda.
What if there's an emergency?
The national agenda also contemplates contingencies. That emergency or that contingency will not be an overwhelming part of your budget.
Well, the previous administration had a perfect example when COVID hit.
Yes.
And all the structures appear to have had to be collapsed for a new system to be put in place to tide us over those murky waters.
So assuming there's a national emergency, for which reason a good number of ministries, departments and agencies have to deviate from their plan and now pursue emergency measures. That national emergency, more often than not, is one that will be proclaimed at the national level, understood by Parliament, approved by Parliament. In the example that you cite, the Finance Minister had to go to Parliament and suspend the Fiscal Responsibility Act. The President had to, more or less declare that we were going through, a particular emergency, which was not just local, it was international. Those exceptions exist within the planning framework. But we should not create a situation where ministries, departments, and agencies refuse to comply and say that, I did this because it was an emergency. No, it's a very simple exercise. Ensure that in accordance with Act 480, your plan is certified by the NDPC. And ensure that now in the new clauses that we want to introduce into the PFM Act, it is certified so that you get a budget to work.
Yours is about tying these policies, these development agenda, the plans to specific allocations in the budget. And you're hoping that it will save us 17 to 18%?
That is our number. We've submitted it to the Clerk of Parliament or to the Speaker through the Clerk of Parliament. It's being sent to the Office of Research in Parliament for them to conduct what we call the fiscal impact analysis to validate these assumptions that we have. We'll see the final figures when they come out. But yes, that is our expectation, that if we're able to block the use of public funds to do projects other than projects that are certified, or to do things or to pursue objectives other than those ones that are certified by the NDPC, which means that the NDPC has validated that it's in accordance with a president's program, we'll be able to have more efficient use of the little public resources that we have.
Okay. Now, let's talk about linking this. In your earlier submission, we talked about the party and the government. And now there is a party which has birthed a manifesto that the government has submitted to Parliament and gone through the system to align it with the NDPC and then execute. So where could the gaps occur? Where do you anticipate there will be challenges in this process to get only certified projects covered with the funds?
I think the first challenge will be compliance. In fact, that is the current challenge that you have. Because of the lacuna in the law, that doesn't punish anybody who doesn't do it, or that doesn't make the certification a prerequisite for the release of funds. People are getting away with it. And naturally, a lot of people don't like change. So when you now put in this, one of the challenges that you are expected to face is people's willingness to comply. That is going to be your major challenge. Another challenge that you also face is having the human resource available both at the ministry, department, or agency level and the NDPC level to fast-track the certification of these plans. But our supposition is that when you make this a requirement, and I am head of GBC and I realize that if I don't get my plan certified, I'm not going to be able to even spend my IGF. It will be in my interest to quickly, if I, for example, don't have the human resource to assist this certification, it will be in my interest to prioritize that and get the right kind of people to help the process of certification. Same thing on the NDPC side, so that the certification takes place and then the use of every single CD is towards the persuasion of a particular agenda in this country.
So some would say that, well, now that you are in the minority of the figures in Parliament are not in your favor, you're introducing these hurdles to make it difficult for existing MMDCAs to thrive. Would that be a fair assumption?
Absolutely not. First of all, we're actually introducing this to help a government. It's not even about the NDC government. A lot of things that we are doing are based on lessons that we learned, or things that sometimes we should have even done when we were in power.
So why didn't you do them when you were in power?
You know, first, not everything in this country should be MPP, NDC, or majority, minority. That, you know, it's only when you are in power that you can do some things. That's the first point. The second point is that this democracy we are running is an exercise in constant improvement. There are things you do today you don't get right. You have to learn from it and do it better the next time, whether you're in power or in opposition. I honestly believe that if we had a law like this in place when we were in power, we would have been able to save some more resources that maybe ministers, heads of departments, MMDCs used for projects that were not necessarily in consonance with the president's 4-year plan that had been approved by Parliament. It is the lessons from this that urge us or encourage us to make this available to Parliament. So this bill, if accepted and if passed into law and assented by the president, will actually help any government, any president, to use the little resources available to pursue the president's agenda. It's a president who's going for a campaign, who has signed a social contract with the people. But the nature of governance is that you are sitting in the Jubilee House, and somebody is CEO somewhere, somebody is minister somewhere, somebody is head of agency or MMDC somewhere. And he and his board, or he or she and their board, are also pursuing things they believe are in their interest, their strategic plans, etc. It helps a president when you close this hole, so that everybody in the system is working towards the delivery of the 4-year medium-term plan.
Okay, the Honourable Kojo Nkrumah, MP for Ofoase Ayirebi, is answering our questions on his private member's bill, which is laying before Parliament pretty shortly, to ensure that projects are tied directly with funds, and funds that are released actually seek to meet certified development needs of the country. He believes that this can help plug some of the loopholes in our public financial management system. He's answering some of our questions. If you have some, send them across to us as well, and we will send them, we will read them out to the MP. Honourable, what is NDPC, National Development Planning Committee, doing as part of this whole advocacy?
Well, they, as an independent constitutional body, have not exactly joined the advocacy as we speak now. The process for private members' bills is that the member or the members who are doing it, you submit your memo and a cover letter and a draft bill to the speaker through the clerk. Under the new standing orders, there's now a committee on private members' bills that will get to receive the bill and engage the proponents of the bill and have an understanding. And then they would invite the stakeholders who are affected by the bill. So I expect that when the committee on private members' bill sits, they will invite the NDPC. I've engaged extensively with the NDPC, and I'm very clear in my mind that this will assist the NDPC in becoming a lot more, may I say, useful. I've engaged some officials of the finance ministry, and I'm clear in my mind that they would appreciate the closing of this gap.
Of the current administration?
Of the ministry, yes.
Okay.
So that they will also appreciate very much a closing of the gap, because they want to spend their limited resources on things that deliver a particular end. So I'm clear in my mind that they would also appreciate it. I expect that all of these stakeholders, NDPC, officials of the finance ministry, even some ministers, heads of departments and agencies and MMDC heads will be invited by the committee to give their own views on it. And as the committee examines all of this, I'm hopeful that the committee will come to a view that this amendment bill is one that will help the Republic, and recommend that we formally lay it on the floor.
What would be, if there are any, the constitutional implications of blocking some of these things? Because sometimes even the finance minister needs to go through a process of releasing funds to, meet a certain need in any community, in any sector of the economy. Are there any hurdles on the constitutional side that we may have to scale in this drive? Yeah,
one of the hurdles that we have contemplated is the provisions in the Constitution that says that a private member's bill should not impose a charge on the consolidated fund. So if in the opinion of the person presiding in Parliament, a bill will impose a charge on the consolidated fund, and that bill is not coming from the executive, it will be disallowed. We have done a thorough examination of this bill, and we are of the view that it does not impose a charge on the consolidated fund. In fact, what it does is that it saves money that is in the consolidated fund by requiring you to meet a particular standard before you can access that money. In the case of IGF, when your plans are not certified, it will rather put your IGF in the consolidated fund, because the wording or the phraseology of the Amendment Act as we have it is that you should not be allowed to spend that IGF. It should be retired, or you should not be allowed to retain it. It should be retired to the consolidated fund. So the only potential constitutional hurdle that we envisage is on the question of imposing a charge on the consolidated fund. And our answer, our considered opinion is that no, it doesn't impose a charge on the consolidated fund. Rather, it protects funds within the consolidated fund.
How is this different from what we've seen at the Public Accounts Committee? Because that is also an accountability tool. We've seen CEOs coming to explain why they've spent certain monies and where certain monies have been allocated or where they've been, applied. How is this process going to make that any different from what we've seen?
I'm very happy you've asked that question, and I think it gives us an opportunity to do some public education. So the audit function primarily is a finance inspection function. In accounting, when you are giving money to spend, there are accounting principles, accounting practices, accounting procedures to follow. The main thrust of the audit function is to examine whether or not you followed the appropriate accounting processes and standards in application of the public funds. So you may be given a budget of, let's say, 100 million cedis to do a project. How did you account for that money? Maybe we spent this on compensation, and we spent this on consultants, and we spent this. And if you are doing this, you have to debit this account and credit this account, and there has to be a pay voucher, and it has to go into an account. All of those processes are what the auditors check. And when they finish, they will issue an audit report that says that the accounts are prepared and reflect what they call in auditing a true and fair view of the status of financial affairs, or they may qualify the accounts that they have audited. That is very different from the progress or performance of the specific project. So we give you money to, let's say, go and do planting for food and jobs. The auditors will check the accounting processes you used in drawing that money, paying for contracts, etc. They will not exactly be checking whether the money you spent on planting for food and jobs resulted in the outcomes that were supposed to have been occasioned. That is not their job. Their job is to examine whether or not you followed the accounting principles and practices. So our committee, the Committee on Economy, on which I am the ranking member, we have engaged the National Development Planning Commission. They have what they call the annual progress reports or the annual performance reports, which we are requesting them to bring to Parliament. That is the report that will tell us, so when you took the money for planting for food and jobs, how did it impact jobs? How did it impact food production? How did it impact food prices? So in the end, did we achieve the objectives? But even these two do not answer the question of, is planting for food and jobs part of what the president signed up to and under Article 36(5) presented to Parliament and got Parliament to approve? From experience, you will find that sometimes midway through a government's tenure of office, somebody comes up with an idea and we spend a lot of money pursuing that idea, which is not part of the program or the plan that we have agreed to pursue. In fact, if the government wants to make it part of it, what you have to do is to come and, let's say, do an addendum to the plan and say, 2 years on, we realize this thing doesn't work or this goes this way, we want to amend. But when you have not amended, we should not be allowing you to just, you wake up one morning and say, okay, this is a new idea I have. I want to spend 60 million of the taxpayers' money on this one. Okay, it doesn't work. Next year, I want to spend 80 million on that. That would be dissipating the limited public resources. And I'm saying to you that from some of the lessons that we learned when we were in power, if you close this hole, between 17 and 19% of your budget, you can save and have that money follow the plan that a president has committed to.
And how do we ensure that this is not weaponized as a tool for whether it is, to stifle development projects towards a certain community, a certain sector that may be perceived as non-aligned to the existing regime?
There is only one way to determine alignment, not to an existing regime, but to the plan that we have agreed to follow as a country.
It's all about the plan of the country.
Yes.
Okay.
We talk a lot about, if you go to China, they have a plan for X number of years, and if you go here, they have a plan, they know where they are going. My considered view is that actually Ghana has a planning framework, and then we have medium-term plans. Every 4 years, we come up with a medium-term plan. It's all in the Constitution. The problem is that not all the money follows the plan. And so what we are trying to do is to close it for all the money to follow the plan, except for some contingency, which can be, appropriated in any year's budget. That one is not a problem. But the way to prevent it from being weaponized is exactly what the NDPC does. The NDPC is the one that will go through a process. The NDPC officials are appointed by the president. Currently, Dr. Nimoy Thompson is the chair of the NDPC. They've got their technical officials there. The commission, is made up of people appointed by the president. I will doubt that they will work against their own president, but rather they will watch the president's back and ensure that the things or the priorities that he has committed to, which priorities have been voted for by the people in a social contract, are the very same things that the ministers, heads of departments, and MMDCs are spending their limited resources on. I say again in all humility that if we had a law like this in our time, part of funds that were spent on things that were not part of our manifesto or part of the 4-year governance program would have been blocked. And that's why we've laid this no plan, no cash bill before Parliament.
Like the National Cathedral.
Many other examples may exist.
And perhaps we'll get some more details into it. But what's the guarantee, and I'm sure MMDCs will ask, that their IGFs will not be withheld legitimate or illegitimately and make it difficult for them to actually pursue what needs to be done, because they need those monies to function. GBC needs its IGF to keep afloat on certain levels.
Yeah.
So what's the guarantee that that will not become a tool that is used to deny the agencies of those funds?
The first guarantee is that get your plan certified. So you'd expect the board of GBC and the sector minister in charge of GBC to make it a priority to get your plan certified by the NDPC. The second is that the NDPC commission or the commissioners are put in place by the president, I doubt that they will work against their own president. It will be in their interest to ensure that all of these plans are certified so that all of the ministries, departments, and agencies spend their money following the president's plan. Thirdly, it behoves a responsibility on the NDPC where they think that they are short of maybe officers or enough technical hands to do this examination and certification, to equip themselves to the point where they can adequately do this in a very speedy manner so that it doesn't become a delay tactic, but it ensures that at the end of the day, money is being spent on what has been approved.
Okay, so here is a brief that we've put together on the amendment that the Honorable Kojo Nkrumah is leading via a private member's bill in Parliament, the Public Financial Management Amendment Act 2025, to amend the Public Financial Management Act 2016, Act 921, to prohibit the minister responsible for finance from approving or releasing funds, including internally generated funds, to a ministry, department, or agency that does not have a certified development plan by the National Development Planning Commission. And the amendment of Section 17, which is the approval of budget and release of funds, the minister shall not approve the budget, release funds, or authorize the expenditure of any monies from the consolidated fund or any other public fund for a ministry, department, or agency unless that ministry, department, or agency has had its development plan and program certified by the National Development Planning Commission as being consistent with the National Development Plan. And more on what the Honourable Minister is seeking to do with the amendment is on approval of budget and release of funds. I've just talked about it. For the retention of internally generated funds.
Your favorite part.
Yes, by any ministry, department, or agency unless its development plan and programs have been certified. So is this certification process really that we need to be concerned about, and what it would mean in practice? Does the agency need to put that on paper? What is the proposal for this certification?
So if you read Act 480, which is the National Development Planning Systems Act today, and if you follow what they do, a good number of the ministries, departments, and agencies go for certification. So they'll submit the strategic plan to the NDPC, because first of all, that plan is supposed to be done in accordance with the planning framework that the NDPC has developed. So they'll submit their plans, which have been developed in accordance with that framework. NDPC will examine it, compare it to the 4-year plan of the president, which has been approved under Article 36(5) by the president, and approve or certify that, yes, this plan is in consonance with this. So it already exists. The compliance is the problem. And because there's no punishment for the non-compliance, that's why I'm saying that our estimate is that between 17 and 19% of our spend is not going through that.
Okay, sanctions.
And that is why we are saying that that gap should be closed. The clause 3 that we are proposing is what actually answers the question of sanctions. And clause 3 says a public officer who authorizes or facilitates expenditure in contravention of these first 2 sections commits a breach of this act being the Public Financial Management Act, Act 921, and is subject to administrative sanctions in accordance with Section 98. Section 98 of the Public Financial Management Act is the section that spells out the punishment if you breach the Public Financial Management Act. So essentially what I have done is that we have introduced these new 2 requirements into the PFM, but we are still using the same punishment in the PFM, that if you fail to comply, you would have now committed an offense and you are punishable under Section 98 of the PFM. Let me just mention another thing. Since we put out this private members bill, I've had a number of CSOs, reach out and say, we like this, but can we change it from Section 17 to Section 21(5) by introducing this or these clauses under Section 21(5), which I think is a brilliant idea. So eventually when we appear before the committee, we will be seeking to amend our initial proposal and say these proposals should rather go under Section 21(5) to strengthen the current provisions that are in there. Okay,
so the act the amendment has gone on to talk about what is seeking to be killed by the existing law and what it hopes to achieve, and we've said some of that already, just basically enforcing the requirement for the development planning. But Honorable, I just want to find out from you quickly, when you talk about sanctions, I want to understand the magnitude of losses we are making due to this lacuna in the law that you're explaining to us? How much money are we losing to such projects that we could save?
I mean, today our budget this year is about 290 billion. Let's use our lower tier estimate of about 17% of that, or 15% of that even. That's a very significant amount. That is our estimate. But we've submitted it to the Research Department of Parliament, as I mentioned, to do the fiscal impact analysis under Section 100 of the Public Financial Management Act, and to tell us what they find as well. And we believe that such a significant saving can be made if a law like this is passed. Very briefly, let me read you the penalties under Section 98. If you breach the PFM provisions, which hopefully will now include this one, you commit an offense, and where no penalty is provided for that specific offense, you are liable to summary conviction, either to a fine of not less than 150 penalty units, or not more than 250 penalty units on one side, or to a term of imprisonment of not less than 6 months and not more than 2 years, or to both. So there are quite some significant penalties in the PFM, for which reason we haven't prescribed new penalties for this.
How would you go about getting a bill passed with the numbers that you have in Parliament? A bill like this, which is seeking to, some would say, limit the freedoms of MMDAs, and the government representatives really on the ground when it comes to execution of their plans for the people. Do you think you have enough of a backing from the other side to put this through?
So two misconceptions. I think the first assumption that people have freedoms that we are seeking to curtail is a misconception. People are engaging in lawlessness that we want to cure. It's not freedoms. It's lawlessness that we want to cure. Number two, I think this bill helps the Republic. It helps the government. It helps any president who is in Jubilee House. It watches his back for him. And so my expectation is that our colleagues on the other side, and indeed the general public, will not see this like an NPP NDC matter. This is one of those bills that seeks to cure a problem for the national good. NPP was in power for 8 years.
You didn't introduce the bill then?
We made a mistake. We've learned from some of those mistakes. And even while we are in opposition, we are advancing some of those. We don't have to wait to come to power before we do good. That's not our job as an opposition, just to be opposing everything and waiting to come to power. Where we've learned some things, we should be able to advance it for the growth of our democracy even now. That is what will also help people out there who are watching say that, okay, these guys, if you give them an opportunity, they've learned some lessons. They will do better next time. So it is not an NPP NDC bill. And my expectation is that our colleagues, and I have that impression when I engage some of my colleagues on the other side, our colleagues on the other side will see this clearly as something that helps the government, a president, the Republic, and therefore be supportive of it. And I'll give you one last example. When the LGBT bill was brought to Parliament, you notice that it wasn't necessarily an NPP NDC vote. It passed unanimously. That is the light in which I would expect a bill like this to be viewed. And that was also a private member's bill, by the way.
We are yet to see that law on our statute books.
Yes, the NDC promised that they will ensure that it is signed by President Mahama. We have reason to believe that they are now pussyfooting on it. But that's a debate for another day.
I wish we had more time to talk about that debate, because there was an opportunity for His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa to also sign the bill.
He argued that the processes in the Supreme Court were such that he wanted to have the benefit of the court ruling, and that's why he didn't go ahead to append. But that is water under the bridge now. Now we have a new opportunity with President Mahama, who committed to it and who made a lot of political capital.
What's next for you, Honorable? We are wrapping this up. Ofoase Ayirebi is still, you've been an MP, a recurring MP, occupied that seat for a number of years. This is my third term, yes. So what's the plan?
Well, we are continuing. We've done a lot of infrastructure works. We haven't completed. We're on it. We are now focusing a lot more attention on, may I say, direct people interventions. Because
you're in opposition now.
Well,
and you don't have access to the funds that you had when you were...
Not exactly, but you know, when you've built a road, you don't go back to building that road anymore. So having done a good chunk of the major infrastructure works, we are now spending some more time on direct human interventions. For example, our skills and development intervention, which for the first time is helping us to train about 5 medical doctors who are indigents to become our first set of local medical doctors who are resident in the district is on course. We've got over 500 beneficiaries of our scholarship program. Now that we are not doing a lot of infrastructure programs, we want to expand those direct human interventions some more.
And happenings within the NPP, I'm sure we'll have you back to discuss them and what your future plans are. Because I saw you on that stage on Saturday, and I'm thinking, where are we going with this?
Well,
now, member of the Constitutional and Legal Committee.
Yes. I was also a member of the Communication and Events Committee for the day. I was event director for the day. We all have to bring our skills and our knowledge to bear on helping to reorganize our party, and that's what we're doing.
With an eye on a prize?
Yes, the prize is to get our party reorganized in a manner that we can win the next election and come back to serve the people.
In your capacity
members of parliament, ministers
you're
of
already
state.
Member of parliament.
I hope to
you
stay.
Have been
I hope to stay
state.
as a member of parliament. I hope to have an opportunity to serve in the next NPP administration in whatever capacity. I don't know.
As president?
Oh, no. I mean, we have 4 people who are running currently. We are going to have a council meeting in the next, I think, maybe 4 or 5 days and open up the roadmap for those who want to contest.
So not in the next one, but perhaps in later on?
You're trying to throw words into my mouth. Lead me not into temptation.
I'll try very hard not to, but you make it hard when you're not giving me the answer that I'm looking for.
You just don't like my answers. That's the
no, I don't.
You're looking for an answer for a headline.
Well, I think I have a few, but we'll release that as the day goes by. Honorable, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Always a pleasure to have you at my table. The Honorable Kojo Nkrumah is a member of parliament for the good people of Ofoase Ayirebi. He's also the one leading the private members bill seeking to amend the public financial management bill, the Act 921